work is where a bunch of people are trying to make something for an audience. And so they're trying to like rinse and recycle stuff that actually solves no one's problems because no one is actually the audience. Whereas when you make it for yourself, there's thousands of people just like you who will have the same depth of understanding of it, but it feels selfish in the moment to make something for yourself. But when you make it for yourself, you actually make it for everyone.
But you can be reliably informed that there's some non-insignificant minority of people who also think like you.
Yes.
Who also have the same problems as you, who also have the same fears as you. Yeah. So I'm going through 2 projects at the moment, one being a book and the other being Eutonic, that is nascent and it's new.
Yeah.
And that means that there's lots more of these small things that are actually quite big things.
Yeah.
But I was telling you before we started about the fact there's a hyphen, and there's a hyphen missing between one piece of copy and another piece of copy, but it's printed on 1 million cans.
You're right.
For fuck's sake. But being concerned about being seen as someone who has too high standards is something that for quite a while I felt ashamed about.
Yeah.
Because you feel like a bother. You feel like you're being unnecessarily, it's not even detail oriented, it's picky.
Cumbersome, yeah.
Yes, laborious.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, probably last year, it took me until last year to realize that not succumbing to stopping doing that is probably one of the only reasons why I've had any success.
I mean, I think for anyone who's listening, if you have that, I would consider it a gift. It makes sense for the majority of people to be opposed to that because you do make more work for everyone else. But the product of that work is so much better. And so if you want the work that you have to last and to be meaningful and make an impact, it comes from 100 golden BBs of 100 particularities, of 100 peculiarities that you are picky about because the whole thing needs to work. And what happens is if you have a big project, lots of people have to get involved, but there still needs to be one vision. And otherwise it looks like a Frankenstein where everyone just checks a box of something they did in the past. They just copy and paste it over. And then it doesn't resonate with anyone because again, they just did it for everyone rather than for the artist. And so using that as a frame has given me permission to be.
I like that a lot. Only doing it for you, for the artist, for you to know. Which means not a lot of people will know where this game or this life will take you until you truly realize, oh yeah, I'm actually not going to get any better. I'm just going to get far worse and worse and worse. I know why I said that last part, but yeah, let's continue.
In an unreasonable world. And so like I told this last time I was on, but when I did the book launch, I practiced that presentation 3 times a day, every day for 30 days. So I did 100 run-throughs, full-length run-throughs. First where I did it out loud and recorded it. Second time where I would watch the recording and then edit in real time and then do it again. And I did that every single day. And so then when I came live and had 500,000 people or whatever, it came out, I think, flawlessly. But people were like, man, you're such a natural at this. It's like, well, I did it 100 times. And so sometimes people even hear 100 and it just...
Okay, so what he's implying is that the more repetition you do, the better that you become at it. And the better you become at it, the more higher standards you have, or the more higher level of your tenacity or your experience is. Without it, you will get nowhere within this game of life because you are wielding whatever car, whatever vehicle, whatever standard you are having it into your own mind, if that makes sense.
Big number. But when you do 100 repetitions of something, the first 5 times you're like, wow, I'm so much better. But then like the difference between 5 and the next 95 times is what goes from being great to being a masterpiece. And like it's that next 95 that I think is what makes people world class. And that's where everyone falls off. And that's why most people aren't.
There is this pull, I think, from people who don't have high standards to people who do have high standards to drag them back. It's this like moving back toward the mean is killing the only competitive advantage that you had.
I saved enough to take my mom on a cruise. What's all this? It's Wells Fargo. They like to celebrate when the customers say, I am under my restaurant budget.
Yeah, you are. How about some sushi?
Can I sit down and eat that?
Oh, absolutely. Hey, bring them in. Oh.
My credit score went up.
Hey, keep going, but less. He's safe with his golf trip. Didn't you, Dennis? All right, who's next?
Couldn't agree more. It's conforming, right? It's like they.
I'm gonna go fill up my water too. I just got myself some coffee, so apologies. Wait until I come back to the screen. also want to do one other thing.
Want you to do what they find comfortable, and most things that are like most companies deteriorate when the founder leaves and it happens slowly because it's you go to from 100 golden BBs to 99 golden BBs and it doesn't look that different, and then there's 98 golden BBs and they're like, I don't know, and then 2 years later, 3 years later, you're like, I don't know, it doesn't have the same like magic as what it was, and that's because the art behind it isn't there because it's not unified anymore. It's not congruent anymore. It's 100 departments making decisions with people copying, pasting things for an audience that doesn't exist, rather than one person who's trying to be satisfied for an ideal that they are trying with all their might to live up to.
I suppose this is one of the important reasons to have a singular figure that is the hub and all of the spokes come off it, because they're the only person that gets to see absolutely everything. And typically that would be the founder. In a podcast, that would be a host. In a solo music band, that would be the lead singer or the songwriter or whatever. They get to see everything. For instance, we've done some episodes before where it's...
I like that. And you don't get to see everything that other people make because they don't know the background information of what went into that video or what went into that podcast episode. They don't know. Nobody ever truly bloody fucking knows until... Also, I'm looking at myself in the side mirror, not at the camera. But who cares? Nobody cares. What they're implying is that you don't know until the true story is unlocked or is stated there.
The night before, and I've been not happy with the color grade because the way that something displays on mobile is slightly different to the way that it displays in Premiere Pro, and it's slightly different to the way that it displays in a 6K videographer's curved screen. I've gone, guys, it's like it's not up to scratch. Well, we're not going to be able to get it in time for the export. We're not going to be able to get it in time to get it uploaded, and then there's checks that go through on YouTube. I'm like, well, it needs to happen. Like, it just find a way to make this happen. And yeah, that impulse of just actually seeing it as something that you should lean into. Okay, well, it's not. And if you set the standard and if everybody else gets up to that standard, what it shows is the people who continually push up against that and don't meet that standard they're just not built for this particular company. They're built for someone else that makes a mediocre product, but they're not built for you, who's making a world-class product.
And I really want to jam down someone's throat right now. The whole like, don't be a perfectionist. Like like it's just another word for procrastination. I actually think that's complete bullshit. I think
That's my quote.
is it?
Perfectionism is procrastination masquerading as quality control.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So then I'm gonna put a footnote on it that I think will add context, which is that most people who claim to be perfectionists are not perfectionists. They're actually procrastinating because they're not doing anything.
Correct.
And so it just is a social.
Agreed, because perfectionism only comes from people that actually put in the work, put in the hours, put in the discipline, because without it all, you're just procrastinating. And you're not doing the work where it needs to be done. So do the work now. If not, you will be forgotten.
Acceptable label, because the real perfectionists feel this sickness where they like want to itch their skin off until the thing's done, but they are trying to get it done. Whereas the perfectionist or the procrastinator uses that to say, like, I'm not sure, I'm just getting it right. But like the person who's an actual perfectionist, one wants to finish and is working every hour of every day on the thing and seeing progress towards it. Because if you don't know how your thing is getting better, you're not a perfectionist, you're just ignorant.
They're also moving toward the goal every single step of the way, as opposed to just sitting back. I have this huge list of things that are not doing the thing. Planning to do the thing isn't doing the thing. Thinking about the thing isn't doing the thing. Getting angry at people on the internet that have already done the thing isn't doing the thing. And there's
the way you see an idea in your mind.
There's also people who are perfectionists within the thing that matters most are prepared to see things that are ancillary to that. For instance, you're not absolutely a perfectionist, I'm going to guess, with the short form content that goes out on your Instagram. It's like, this is sawdust, as you call it. This is just, it's extra, right? It's freebie stuff. Look, if we have 1 in 100 videos that have got a typo or the hyphens missing or something like that, all right. But
it's just sawdust. I like that a lot, because without the sawdust, there was no saw. There was no dust within that makes the perfect cut. Because the perfect cut is the perfect video. And the perfect video is the sawdust that is waiting to be re-listened to, relived by, or reused by.
if we're talking about the school announcement release, if there's a fucking typo in that, or if in the video one of the links is broken, or even if one of the links is slightly pixelated, that's something that I can have a problem with. So picking your battles as a perfectionist, I think actually, or someone with high standards, is super important, because you can't have that degree of high standards at absolutely everything, because if you don't pick your battles, you're not going to make sufficient movement at the velocity you need to actually make progress. So find the areas that are the highest contribution. And don't compromise on those.
And it's funny you say that, because the way that I immediately reframed that was that the perfectionism was around volume. It's like, that is what we are optimizing towards. And then we can, because if we knew how people responded ahead of time to content, then we would make things differently than we do. But I, probably like you, am often surprised, pleasantly and sometimes unpleasantly, by the stuff that just grabs hold and then just goes, viral as hell. In content. And so I think part of that is making up for our own ignorance by increasing volume. And so that would be like my reframe on the perfectionism there is like, we know that if we make 10 pieces of content, it is more likely that we will have more people see it than if we try really hard at one. And so we make 10 because the net benefit of the 10 is greater. And so that's the ideal that we commit to.
Tiago Forte has a fantastic take on this, where he talks about perfectionism allows people to sit back and not produce work at a rate required to work out what actually works.
Have you heard the story of the pottery class? Oh, I feel like the same condition and the same behavior. And so I often say that, like, for anyone who's listening to this podcast, if the goal is to get better and you're like, man, I really want to learn something from this podcast. If you listen to this podcast and then you're in the same exact conditions as you were before, and then you do not change your behavior, you learned nothing. And so using that definition has at least allowed me to change my behavior faster.
Same condition, new behavior. I like that a lot, because without the new behavior, without the so-called same condition, you will get nowhere within this game of life. You will try to get somewhere, but you will truly get nowhere. So do as he's saying and change your life.
Which then goes into rate of learning, which I define as intelligence. And so a lot of people are like, man, he's so smart, but he just doesn't. It's like, well, then if he doesn't change his behavior and he's in the same conditions, he's a dummy. He's not that smart. And so if you are trying to battle the same boss over and over again, and you don't change what you're doing, and the boss keeps beating you, then it's not the game's problem. It's your problem. You are the problem. And I think that's like if you continue. I talked about, obviously I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, but I usually do this when I have a crowd. It's like, hey, raise your hand if you work all the hours of the day. And a lot, most of the crowd raises their hand. I say, okay, who here has been stuck at the same revenue level for 6 months or more? And then I say, keep the hands up. And like, honestly, most of the time, the same hands are raised. I say, you're doing the wrong shit. Like, if you put all your inputs and the outputs haven't changed, then you have the same condition and the same behavior. And so you have learned nothing. And so that has always just been my reframe. And so over time, if you're moving up in entrepreneurship, you're moving up in career, your behavior should change because it means you've learned.
Exposure to information isn't learning.
Great TLDR.
Yes. It's true. Yeah. It's true. And it's
exposure to information means you're not learning. Oh, I like that one too. Because when you expose yourself in a certain way. Whatever that certain way is, it can only be for you to know truly. Because you might not know where this so-called thing will go, or where this so-called learning of a new information will lead you to. If that makes sense.
Same with memory. It's literally the way that memory works. The best way to work out how the human memory system works is repeated recall, not repeated exposure, right? You have to drag it out of memory and use it, not just see it a million times. And this is kind of the same thing with the lesson. It's, you can listen to any of the podcasts that exist on the internet, or the ones that we've done, or the ones that you love, or whatever. And if you don't apply anything, it's a waste of time. And this is the best solution for this is Tim Ferriss's The Good Shit Sticks. Look, what's the thing from the podcast or the book or the audiobook or the whatever that you read or listened to that you can't stop thinking about? That you go to bed and you think about it, that you took a screenshot or a screen recording and sent it in the group chat, that you like texted your mum about it at 3 a.m. Oh, this really explains the way that I felt in school, or the way that I felt when such and such broke up with me, or whatever. That's the thing. That's the thing to focus on. But a lot of the time, the problem with mental masturbation is that the amount of information you can intake versus the amount of change that you can deploy is asymmetric.
Yeah, when I was getting started in my entrepreneurial journey, and I would say this is like this I was when I was an entrepreneur, right? Like I hadn't quit my job yet. I started reading all these self-help books. And I remember reading, like, it was probably like my 10th book in a row. And I realized that the words in that book contradicted like the second self-help book that one was like, it's all about goals. The other one's like, it's all about taking, steps or whatever it was. Right. And I all of a sudden I was like, my life is the same. I've read all these books, but I still literally live in the exact same condo in Baltimore doing the same job. Like nothing has changed. And so I just made the commitment that whatever the next book that I was going to read, I would just not read another book until I'd done everything in that book. And that's when I quit my job and I did a whole bunch of other things. And I've actually more or less stuck with that in terms of like when I read books or even listen to podcasts, I usually do it with an intention to get something out of it. And I usually have notes up. And so my intake on information, because I get asked a lot, I'm sure you do. Like I actually don't read that much. I definitely don't read nonfiction. I read like fantasy every once in a while.
Red Rising, baby.
That's right. But it's because usually I get overwhelmed with the amount of things I would have to do. And so I'm like, I don't need more information. I'm good. Like, I could read a chapter and be like, all right, that's it. It'll take me 2 weeks to do this. And so then like the rest of the time is doing that. And so
how do you ensure that the things that you're reading are giving you good advice? Because if you didn't move on before you took 2 weeks to go and do the thing, but the thing was dog shit, you've spent 2 weeks going backward.
So I would make the argument that I wouldn't have gone backwards because I would have gained the experience. And so I would have more context to know what the second thing was going to be. And that's just kind of like the trial by fire, learning through iteration. And I think I tend to do more of that.
Sort of a win or learn philosophy.
Yeah. And I would say that like there are entrepreneurs who are definitely like super, super duper planners. And there are entrepreneurs who are more like, let's just move and break shit and we'll figure it out. I tend to be really this on the micro in terms of like move shit and break, like we'll figure it out as we go. And I just tend to be a planner only in the big, like very grand, like what do I really want to do in 10 years? But the majority of the time it's like, let's see. And we'll learn. I've learned so much, like so much of the content that I have comes from just fucking up in business. And people are like, this is such original content. I was like, this is just because that.
I'm the same way. Because without fucking up, you do not learn, you do not grow, you do not achieve, you do not become that better version of yourself. Because without learning, you are going to stay in the same spot, like he said, over and over and over again until you change, until you do something more important.
My life was. I made this mistake and it didn't work. But I said this one thing one time and then all these people bought and I was like, ooh, how do I do that again? And so like it was always through iteration. And I've read all these books, but there's simply knowing how, knowing that and knowing how. Like knowing that maybe this works, maybe. But once you do it, it's a different type of learning where, at least for me, it's been that way. You could read 100 books on sales, but when you take your first cold call, all of that goes out the window because you actually have to sell.
We'll get back to talking to Alex in 1 minute, but first I need to tell you about Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte. Your first box /Modern Wisdom. This is related to something I wrote last week. Don't be so worried about people who imitate your work. They only know the what, but not the why. If you stopped being creative, so would they. A photocopier isn't an artist, even if it can recreate the Mona Lisa.
Hi, we're Charity Water. If we lost you at Charity, we get it. Give us a moment to change your mind. At Charity Water, we're known for telling great stories, but we're big.
I love that. Because at the end of like you are source in that situation. And so everyone is there for like a subset of you and they require you to live, you don't require them. And the equal opposite is I think we should be more fearful of when everyone stops copying you. Like the day that no one copies you is far, far more frightening than the day everyone's copying you.
Yeah. Jimmy Carr refers to China as a cover band. Yeah. It's like they're the cover band of the Beatles. And he says, they're good and in many ways they're able to produce things at more scale and so on and so forth, but they're not driving the innovation forward in that same way.
Yeah, the idea of getting upset about people copying is just ridiculous. Like, yeah, that's all. But
you understand why it's painful, right? If someone's gone through, okay, let's test and test and test and test and test, and then finally find a particular formula that works, and then 10 people downstream get the benefit of this hard, laborious, effortful, late night grind and iteration, and they just got to be like, oh, that thing.
Yeah. So I think that like they'll be able to.
I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. I'm gonna go for a walk.
Be able to copy what they can see, but they won't be able to copy what they can't see, which is understanding why each of those pieces are in place. And when something changes in the future, they won't be able to iterate from there because they don't know why it was there in the first place.
Why.
Right. And so like, I mean, I've obviously dealt this in a business context where like real dollars are at stake. And so like in the gym world, Gym Launch, for those who don't know, I had a big licensing company. We had 5,000 locations. And anyways, so we had basically business processes that we would, iterate and figure out why this worked. And so then I used to keep a list of names, and then it got too long and tiresome to keep the names of all the people who tried to take the stuff and then sell it as their own. I say their names every night before I go to bed. You think I don't remember you? I remember all of you. And so none of them 10 years later are still around. And none of them even came to a 10th of the size of Gym Launch. And it was because it wasn't theirs. Like the person that I would be far more afraid of, somebody who comes out with a significantly better system than what we had to help gyms make more money and help their clients more. But like to this day, like there still isn't one, and that one's Gym Launch is still the category king in that industry. And so it's like and that's because we were talking about this earlier, everything is in R&D for us. And so we actually were the only licensing company that had an R&D department, and we would test. We call them plays, but we test plays every 14 days. And so we'd spend 50 or 100 grand on just a test. We'd be like, all right, let's test this new marketing campaign. Or we'd say, hey, let's test this new high ticket sales process. Or hey, what if we try to sell memberships via chat? Let's just give it a shot, see what happens. And honestly, 70% of the time, it was worse than the control. Like it didn't work as well. And what we would do is we'd present it to the licensees and say, hey guys, guess what we just spent 50 grand on that you don't have to spend money on? Look at the results of this sell memberships
Total
via
dog
chat.
shit.
Yeah. The thing is that most people are actually really happy to know that it didn't work, because it felt like they were scratching an itch. They're like, oh, great, I don't have to do that one. Yeah. Like someone did that test for me. So anyways, all that to say, unless you have that trail of bodies behind you that led you to figure out this one thing, when there is a kink in the system because some external condition changes, which it always will, they then don't know, which means you're always still going to be ahead.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, because if you understand the physics of the system, if you understand the dynamics of why you're doing the things that you're doing and something changes, you can respond. But it goes back to people with high standards. You have to presume that you win in the weeds.
Yeah.
You have to presume that you win in the weeds. And if you do, and if you're continuing to be this close to it, as soon as things change, you go, that's interesting. Why has that happened? And that then allows you to continue to iterate.
And you see it because you're in the weeds, right? Somebody who's all the way zoomed out, just like, copy paste that. They're like, they're late because they have to see that it's working consistently. So they're already 3-6 months behind. Then they start trying to figure out how to implement it. And then they start implementing it. And then what they don't see is the things that made the conditions that made it work to begin with. And so like, if you just assume that you're always in the lead, then it means sure, 2nd through 10th place will always copy number 1, but to the victor go the spoils. And so you will, like, no one gives a shit who is 4th place at the Olympics.
Reminder that if you want to be exceptional, you're going to be different from everyone else. That's what makes you exceptional. You can't fit in and also be exceptional. Both have discomfort. When you fit in, you have internal conflict because you're not being 100% you. When you're exceptional, you have external conflict because everyone sees you as different. Pick one. When your friends start to say, you've changed, remember, it's because they don't know how to say, you've grown.
Introducing the all-electric Hyundai Ioniq 9.
I didn't think that Factor could help me reach my protein goals. Boy, was I wrong. Free high-protein breakfast for a year? Yeah.
I define words a lot because it helps me kind of like make sense of the world. And like exceptional is like an obvious one, right? We use the word exceptional like you are not like everyone else. But even saying it like that, like you are not like everyone else. And so if someone says you're not like everyone else, then you can just reframe that as like, I am exceptional. And that's not a bad thing. I actually think that most people have, like, this might be counter to most people's beliefs, but I think most people have the potential to be exceptional. And because most people are peculiar in their own way. They just stifle that because they want to be accepted by most people. But in so doing, never accomplish what they want to do because they conform. And so, like, if there's probably a lot of things about the world or even your world around you that you're like, this never made sense to me, but then you do it anyways. And I think that a lot of innovation and a lot of what makes people exceptional is feeling, thinking that thought or seeing that thing and then being like, huh.
Feeling that thought or seeing that thing without seeing and feeling the thing, you don't know where your life will lead you. You never know until you truly do the things you want to do and say the things you want to say, which then at that time and at that point, you have no true level of honesty about where you want to go and where proportional side rounds of where you are going to where you see fit, if that makes sense.
I don't think I'm going to follow that rule anymore. Like, why do I need to shower twice a day? Huh. Like, I don't know. Like, why do I need to wear different clothing? Huh. Like, there's just a lot of these social norms that people, usually pass down to us or they're, bred into us in high school and college and things like that. But it's like you see a guy who, wears a cowboy hat and dresses a certain way. And he basically wants to say, I am this archetype of person. But if cowboy boots aren't as comfortable for you as New Balances are, and you know that and you still wear cowboy boots, I would call you a fraud. Because like that is like it's like a micro rebellion against yourself. Yep. It's like there is, and like I look at old people a lot because usually they don't give a shit anymore. They've just like given up. And there was a survey that they did where the number one reason that old people like don't have as much drama and they're happier is they say they cited they literally don't have time for it. Like literally, they don't have time for it. And I found that so interesting. And I was like, well, if I'm going to eventually be that way when I'm 80, I might as well just start being that way now. And so they usually wear like really comfortable footwear and like they keep their surroundings like whatever weird peculiarities they have, they just accept them. And so I think a lot of like if life is a long journey of self-acceptance, I think the earlier you can accept your own peculiarities as just part of you rather than trying to justify them or mold to the archetype that you think is acceptable within your social circle. At least for me, like there's this period of discomfort when you change anything because everyone around you wants you to fit within the label that they are comfortable with.
But they also have the anchor of what you were before.
Yeah, exactly. And so they try and like, they people don't like that. And so they're like, no, I like you in this box. So just say, I know you're having a little thing right now. Don't worry. Just, and they just want to shove you back into it. And there's a lot of uncomfortable conversations that you have to have where it becomes really socially awkward. And so like I said one the other day about like going home for the holidays, and the reason I don't like doing it is because often I have to confront a lot of people that I haven't seen in a long time, and they'll speak to me in a way that I don't like. And before that, I would roll it off like whatever, no big deal. But I don't accept that.
Didn't you torpedo a family holiday a couple of years ago?
Many.
Yeah, I think, but that's when your friends start to say you've changed, it's because they don't know how to say you've grown.
And because they see so few people who have, so it makes sense that they don't have that. So I see that as a lack of skill, not malice. Like it's not that they're bad people, they just don't even know it because so few people do change. Yeah. So few people do grow.
Have you seen this image? It's a person whose heart and head are flowers. It's kind of a 2D drawing. Okay. It's a bit of a sketch.
Okay.
And they say this person with the kind of smaller flower head and heart says you've changed, and the person on the other side with this huge blooming thing says I should hope so.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I see it in my head.
Yeah. It's brilliant.
It does sound very brilliant, because not a lot of people know how to say you've grown, but they know how to say you've changed. So whatever that so-called thing is, it might only be for you to know, which is totally fine. I mean, it's fine by me if you don't know how to say you changed versus you've grown. But the way I look at it is if you don't know how to change, that means you don't know how to grow. If that makes sense.
One of my friends, George Mack, told me this 5 years ago, I think. I'm astounded by how many people want to be spectacular in life, but also want to be normal. By being normal, you are, by definition, aiming for average. Normal people get normal results. Exceptional people get exceptional results. You literally can't do what everyone else does and expect to not get what everyone else.
Like and comment. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.